What can we do to help the company, and what can the company do to help TA? What can we do for each other, and how can all of the departments work together to ensure that we can keep people and get them there faster?
So what does it really take for your business to attract world-class talent today? I'm Dave Travers, president of ZipRecruiter, and on Talent All-Stars, we shine a light on the people and the day-to-day processes behind recruitment and retention at some of the world's most influential businesses. Today's Talent All-Star is Ashley Lynch, Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Marsden Services, a leading provider of cleaning, security, and maintenance services. Ashley didn't plan on a career in recruiting. You'll hear about her unique background in a moment. But when she started at Marsden, her own hiring experience was so positive that it inspired her to lean into talent acquisition. Today, she leads the function for a company that's made huge strides in hiring and retention. So let's hear more about her journey and how she's pulled that off. Ashley Lynch from Marsden Services, welcome to Talent All-Stars.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you. So great to be able to talk about so many different things given your amazing background and interesting path. But start out with, a lot of people get into talent acquisition by being a recruiter or by doing other stuff in HR and then coming there. Your path was a little bit different. How did you end up as a talent acquisition leader?
Yeah, so through my history of my career, I've been in retail and the fitness industry. And through that, as you said, I'm wearing the operations hat. I've been in customer service and sales, and we're HR and we're TA. So throughout all that, while you're running inventory and while you're getting prepared for the seasonal rush, we are ever hiring forever, always making sure that we're out looking for new talent. A lot of times in the retail and fitness industry, you have a lot of high schoolers or college students that are looking for, that transition period or somewhere where they can work until they're out of college. And so I always had my hand in TA. I always was sourcing, interviewing, onboarding, hiring, training. I always loved digging in and figuring out, what are your goals? Where do you want to be up at? Where do you want to be someday? Do you want to work here? Do you want to grow here? Or you're going to college right now. What do you want to do from there? And so I always feel that we have that opportunity to build that skill set for whatever adventure they're going to be going on in the future. But we have that opportunity to learn that and help kind of mold them into their future environments and future careers someday. So I always had my hand in that until I interviewed with Marsden and met a great executive recruiter who won me over for a TA manager position here in this office. And that was an excellent opportunity that I jumped right on. And I will say in TA, it really matters in how you interview and how you come across and how you sell the role in the company. And with the executive recruiter, her name was Brandy Guile. The first time I spoke to her, she was really excited, energetic. She was very passionate about the role, passionate about the company, the direction the company was going, what their initiatives were, what all you're overseeing and doing on a day-to-day, and getting a true snapshot. And we ended up going over our interview time. It was an amazing experience. It was very fun, lighthearted. And I was like, oh, I really like this. This is really exciting. This is a little different from what I was doing. I always loved the human aspect of the business. And so, I went through a couple rounds of interviews with people who had equal amount as passion and energy as she did. And I was like, this is where I want to go. Let's give it a try. And here I am.
So what I love about that story, first of all, like Brandy in particular brought out and lit something up in you clearly. And what I love about it is it connected with how you have always viewed interviewing as a hiring manager rather than early in your career as the TA lead or leader. And talk a little bit of what was so clear both as you talked about your own path to TA in that amazing interview and also as you sort of approached evaluating people and recruiting people as a hiring manager, you talked a lot about where are you going? Not just, where are you at today? What are your skills? What is it about where you're going or your ambitions or your dreams? Or what is it about all that makes talent acquisition come alive for you?
So, I would really say that getting the opportunity to meet someone at any level, at any position, and understanding where they're coming from. Sometimes they share in the interview, I just really need a job. I need to pay my bills, or this looks like a really exciting opportunity. Your company has some great things going on, and being able to build off that excitement and what they're looking for, and then giving them that offer, when we get to that point and hearing the excitement in their voice that we help them find this opportunity. We offered them, and now they have an opportunity to kind of change their life or take a new trajectory. And I always find that to be very exciting. And everyone has an opportunity to grow. I started in retail with my grandmother when I was a little girl, and I've kind of grown. And someone gave me some keys one day when I was 19. And, I've been a leader since then. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity if she didn't see in me, the leader who gave me those keys, that I could move on and be something someday. I wouldn't be in this spot right now without her giving me those keys when I was 19. She helped set my trajectory. So being able to set anyone on that trajectory, helping anyone accomplish those goals, no matter how minor or how large, I think is super crucial, super exciting. Because if you can have someone feel that their goals are going to be met or have a potential to be met, might not be today, could be 3 years, but you're on a path. And so seeing that is always really exciting. And then seeing the internal promotions or seeing, always having a backup plan is super crucial. So being able to fill with talent that can do it is super exciting. And that you have something ready to go on the back wing. If someone wins the lottery someday, you have some good talent there. So I just find that all very exciting, very passionate about development and getting people to where they want to go someday.
I loved hearing you mention a couple times there what it was like when those keys were handed to you. It doesn't sound like it was just the physical sensation of the keys in your hand. There was something big about realizing the responsibility that you were deemed worthy of at that point. Talk about that and talk about how that shapes you now as a leader as you think about developing other people.
This is a leader I'll never forget my entire life. Her name was Trina Subtle, and she was my leader at Bath & Body Works. And I got hired as a seasonal associate, and I loved it. It was very lively, energetic, lots of customers. You can help with inventory. I would paint the building, like anything that could get me involved. I was all for it. So I was always volunteering for new opportunities. And she would teach me, we wore aprons. We wear aprons at Bath & Body Works, and they had pockets. And so I would put my hands in my pockets in the front throughout the day. And hi, how you doing? And welcome to the store. And then she came up to me one day and she's like, why do you put your hands in your pockets? And I was like, oh, I guess it's just like I'm fidgeting and I don't realize that my hands are in the pockets. And she goes, do you think you'd be a little bit more inviting if you put your hands behind your back? You're not closing yourself off. You're opening yourself up. You're being, hi, how are you? I'm nervous. I'm open to talk to you. And she would always bring up challenges like that, but in a way that helped develop you and kind of come to the answer yourself and, kind of grow you from there. So challenging my mind to think in a slightly different way. And she would do that as we got into leadership. And she saw how much I was saying yes and how receptive I was to everything she was saying. And we had an opportunity came up where a key holder left. And we did have an external hire come in, which is great. I helped train and interview, and I was there about 8 months at this point. And she only stayed for 2 weeks, which was sometimes it doesn't work out for all. And Trina's like, I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. How would you feel about being a key holder? I was really excited. And she's like, you're very passionate. You're really excited. You're eager to learn. And, I think you have a lot of potential. And so I worked with her for a couple years and I got up to an assistant manager at Bath & Body Works. And she just helped kind of train me and develop me. And there was always a people first mentality. And that I really grew and my heart got attached to. And that's how I tried to continue my leadership to this day from that experience with her.
It's so clear as you talk about that story with Trina that you were a willing and eager recipient of that attention, feedback, coaching on where to put your hands, etc. How do you now apply that as a leader yourself? How do you think about having that sort of an impact on other people? And for those other emerging leaders who want, like, wow, I would like one of my people to someday talk about me the way you're talking about Trina, how would you approach being that kind of a leader?
Yeah, so I would like to consider my coaching style and my challenge style similar to hers. Like, what do you think of this? Or why are you doing it this way? And have them kind of tell me and come up with the answer themselves, as opposed to don't do this, do it this way. Instead, having them come up with the conclusion and having them understand the path and be able to come up with the answer tends to stick and tends to help the realization a little bit more. At least it did with me. And what it's done so far with who I've led up to this point is because as a leader or as you develop, you need to be able to address challenges on your own. You need to be able to think through something. You're maybe not always going to have a leader there. Maybe you're going to be the leader and you need to be able to be the one that has the answers and can come up with solutions. And so I really pride myself on that coaching, the way of coaching, of challenging in a way of you come up with the solution, you come up with the opportunity, and then now let's solution it together. What would you do to solution that? How would you improve that? Why would you improve it that way? So having them kind of understand that there's levels to some decisions that we make. Not that I'm saying no or we're saying no, just let's talk through that, And so I always find that to be a great way to challenge someone and grow someone, is helping them learn through that aspect. And so I've just carried that through. It was successful, I feel, with Trina towards me. So I'm carrying the torch and continuing that down that path.
It's so much more, all of us can identify with being the person being coached. We've all been there at some point. And it is so much more engaging and similar to your story about where to put your hands. It is so much more of an opening rather than a closing, to invite someone, let's think this through together, rather than to say, here's what you're doing right, here's what you're doing wrong. So when you have the opportunity to and the time and the space to engage somebody like that, as we're hearing now from you, the dividends can pay off long into the future.
Definitely. And then you build a self-sufficient team, a team of innovators as opposed to a team of followers. You want your team to be innovators with you, not waiting for what you're going to tell them to do next, because again, looking for that next opportunity. Someone needs to replace me someday. And if it could be someone who's here and continue growing, then that's amazing. And that's the ultimate goal, is preparing that next person to take over. So having a team full of innovators is super crucial, in my opinion.
Totally right. And it is so easy to fall into as a manager, and I think we've all done this, I certainly have, you can fall into the trap of, why won't people just do what I'm telling them to do? But to your point, if people are just good at doing what you say, how are they going to be good at saying, hey, I'm an empowered thinker and business partner here to think, hey, this thing that we're doing, no one's thought of this yet, but it's obvious it would be better if we did this. Instead, you have to show them, not just tell them.
And today, my team, I rely heavily on them to help me come up with ideas. And sometimes they're like, I was thinking about this. They send me a message in the middle of the day, and I'm like, that is an excellent idea. Let's kind of grow off that. So, I can't have all the good ideas. We all have to have the good ideas.
Yes. And even if you're not going to use the idea exactly as they say it, saying it's an excellent idea does not mean, and we're going to implement it as you said it tomorrow. Okay, fantastic. So fast forward now. So we've talked about how you came from operations and moved into talent acquisition. We've talked about you developing as a leader. Now talk about, you've shifted industries. You talked about being in fitness and in retail, and now you're at Marsden in facilities and operations for physical locations. What's the difference and what's the same as you switch industries in how hiring works?
I think the only difference, in my opinion, is just how we operate. And the rest of it, there's internal customers and then our clients that we service. That doesn't change. We're selling the roles to our candidates. So we have sales in there. Our operations, we're still trying to make sure that we're doing all the necessary tasks to reduce risk and ensure compliance is on top. And we're HR, helping answering questions, and then TA. So we're still handling all of the similar things, in my opinion, though the differences are what we're selling. What's the product? What are we selling? I use the word, you're going to hear this a lot, is selling the role. So you'll hear that throughout the time as we talk, is we're very passionate about selling the role, selling to the candidate. The candidate is interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them. And we want to make sure that they understand the whole aspect of the job, what they're going to be doing, what they're walking into on day one. And so it's a little bit different because in retail and LA fitness industry, you walk in, you know what you're going to get. Every retail location is the same. Every fitness club is the same. There's maybe minor differences if they have a spa or not, something like that. But every client, they could have multiple buildings, but the square footage could be different, or the meeting location, or if there's a bus route or not bus route, in certain spots. So being able to identify the differences between each of the locations and noting that and being able to sell that to the candidate is like the biggest difference, I guess you'd say. But in how we're executing it, I would say is very similar.
Okay, so now that you've worked in different industries, you've played different roles at different companies, you come into a role where you're leading talent acquisition and you've had other HR responsibilities too, but you're leading talent acquisition where you've seen it done from several different angles and several different ways. How do you decide what to change about how talent acquisition works and what to double down on? So, like, you're coming into this new role, where do you start? What is the framework you use to decide what to change and what to keep?
Yeah. So my big three, I would say, is understanding your data and market analysis. So you understand your area, who are your competitors, what's nearby, can they go across the street for 25 cents more, something along those lines. How many openings do they have nearby? Really understanding the market and the wages and where they're at there, as well as the data. So looking into our KPIs, where are our bottlenecks, where are our opportunities for each of the areas? What do we need to hone in on? Is it only a specific type of accounts? Is it all of the accounts? Is it, really delving into each layer of the KPI and really understanding where the issue might be? And then mixing that in with big picture thinking. So seeing the end goal, understanding what the company initiatives are, understanding what are we trying to accomplish. We can't just change things to change things. We have to have a reason. And coming in here, a couple opportunities that I definitely identified right away. Lowering the days to fill. So ensuring that we can fill roles faster, hiring people faster, as well as retaining people once we've hired them. And so a couple of those first things that stood out was those days to fill. And okay, what's taking us so long? Why can't we fill those roles? I'll have some examples for you on that. That were the eye openers for this exact question that you're asking me. And so really understanding all those opportunities and going back and bringing it all together. What can we do to help the company, and what can the company do to help TA? What can we do for each other, and how can all of the departments work together to ensure that we can keep people and get them there faster? Because if we can do that, then we're going to spend less money on overtime. The managers aren't going to be working too much, so on and so forth. So we can help solve, I think, a couple problems at once if we can get that end goal and look at the big picture. So those are my three bigs that I looked at and look into anytime I get a new area or an acquisition or anything like that, is really understanding where those bottlenecks are and where do we need to get to.
Let's dive in on one of those. You mentioned speed. I don't think there's anybody out there who does anything with hiring who says, I like our process, but I wish it were just a little slower. So like that's one where I think everyone listening to this can feel. But how do you then get confidence we can actually move the needle on that? Like how did you dig in and say, hey, not just it would be great if we could go faster, but we can actually do this. How did you figure that out?
Yeah, so I actually have an example of two locations of when I first started that I went and looked at right away. So we had two locations. One, people would last a day, maybe 2 days, and it was so odd why it was considered a medical clinic, and it was a smaller building, and in an okay area. It was off the bus line. So it seemed like a great location. And so, had to go visit the site myself. I truly believe that our talent acquisition team really need to go get eyes on the site in order to sell the role and understand the site yourself and understand where this candidate will be going, what they'll be walking into every day. And so when I walk into this facility, when I think of medical clinic, I'll think of like beds, rooms with beds, there's a trash can, maybe a counter and a sink. And this was a long, continuous hallways with big windows that were almost full-size windows along the whole hallway. And it was actually a plasma and blood lab. So there was actually plasma and blood kind of hanging around and everywhere through the windows. And so thinking of from a candidate's perspective, I hear medical clinic. And I walk in and I'm actually not good with blood. Blood doesn't work for me, but I walk in here and like, this is not what I was told. This is not what I want to do every day. I don't want to clean a mirror and look at these blood plasma bags, and throughout the day. So that was a great identifier. The moment we're just saying, this is a blood plasma place. Are you comfortable being around this? The next person we hired loved it and was fine with it. And he was there for 1.5 years after that. So it's just a matter of that location identifying, let's just clarify what we're saying and how we're selling it versus just, it's a medical clinic, good luck. So really understanding and building that. And then my second example is in the same trip. So it was another location. We couldn't keep people there for very long either. We knew it was like a warehouse type of environment. It was large. So it's like, okay, large warehouse environment. I'm thinking of like distribution center type. And so when I get there, it's actually 13 buildings on a couple city blocks with a fence surrounding it. And so as you walk through, you realize a part of the team, 30% of the team that works on one side, gets to be in buildings more often. And I went in the middle of the summer, so it was pretty hot. So they get to be in the buildings more often. They have a golf cart they can use, and so on and so forth, because those buildings are closer. Then on the other side, you had to walk to each of the garbage cans that were on wheels. You had to stop at the smoking stations, and you're walking around forklifts. You don't have a golf cart. You're kind of walking around. So you're outside exposed to the heat. There's asphalt. You're keeping your eye out for safety on the forklifts driving around you. And so you're a little bit more than just a warehouse. So once we were able to identify this and really find people who were comfortable, who understood the facility, we even started some site visits. Go visit the site and walk it with the manager for an interview, just to make sure that you're comfortable with the type of facility. So once we were able to identify that and clarify the roles and what they would be doing exactly, there's some people who love being outside, even in the summer, not me, but others that want to be out there. And so we've been building retention in those areas where we're able to identify what it is. Something could be as simple as it's re-identifying the facility type is to help sell that role a little bit better, or refrain from someone leaving in the first day.
What's so great, a couple things you talk about there. One is like you talk about selling the role. You can't sell something you don't understand. And your instinct to go feel it, not just read about it, is so powerful because it gives you the ability to sell. You can describe it in a way that if you had not been there, you would not have been able to make me viscerally feel the blood plasma or the hot asphalt as you just described that. And secondly, that rolls through to then once you've sold it, the expectations management you talked about. You're not going to get someone to stay in this role for a couple of years or more if they come in having envisioned something and the reality is something very different. And that comes back to speed, because if you can sell the vision that accurately, then you know when you're bringing in 5 people for a final interview, all of them have already a visceral sense for what this job is going to be like. You're not going to have 4 of them show up and be like, this isn't for me, and then have to hit the reset button on the whole process. So now you've talked about some of the processes you've improved there, and you're in a business that is very physical and tangible in many ways with physical locations, but we also live in a world where technology is now impacting everything we do. How do you think about, in a very on-site oriented, operational oriented company like Marsden, how and when do we integrate technology? And when does client service with a real human being who cares about solving a problem have to be the way something gets done? How do you think about that?
I strongly believe in embracing and understanding and learning about new technologies. You want to be proactive and kind of ahead of the times as opposed to behind and reactive. That's how you're going to kind of stay ahead of your competitors and so on and so forth. So here at Marsden, we've actually started piloting some AI features. So we haven't rolled it out on the broader side yet, but we have noticed where we've piloted at some big returns. So we have seen that our show rate has improved. So for example, I don't like to show our scars, but in some areas, we do have 68, 70% no-show rate where people aren't showing up to the interviews, and so how do we fix that, and where do we find those gaps? So there's what we can do, and then there's how can we catch them earlier in the process and keep them engaged throughout the process, and being able to shorten the gap between that show rate and being able to use your time in a better way by making sure people show up. Our show rate with the pilot has gone down 28% in the markets that we piloted. So being able to improve that could really help us in many ways. And another area that's really helped that we've seen the progress from is our 60-day retention. So, we're able to catch people a little bit sooner. We're able to get them through the process in a more smooth way. We're able to get them kind of an idea of who they are before we get to talk to them. But we haven't lost that element of human touch. So even though we have these features that we're piloting, they still have a human that they're working with throughout the rest of the process and that they're going to get a welcome package from. So they're going to feel that they're still part of Marsden. They still get to have a welcome to Marsden email, welcome to Marsden video, introducing who Guy is, who we are, who our values are. So they still feel like they're a part of something. So we're really trying not to jeopardize the human touch while still implementing and trying out some of these new features. So for me, it's not a choice between efficiency and the human element. It's about the integration of it. So how can you handle that communication with your team. You need to be thoughtful. You need to be well planned. You need to have your communication ready and make it feel like the recruiters are still a part of the process and not being replaced by any technologies. It's an enhancement versus a detriment, anything that's going to bring them down or replace them. So really leaning on that and then helping them understand that they get to focus on all the things that they're amazing at, building that relationship after the technology phase, servicing our internal clients more, but having a little bit more time to be able to get through those processes and, creating the ultimate candidate experience. So still maintaining that while trying this. So we will be potentially rolling some out later throughout the rest of the year, and we'll be coming up with a strong communication strategy and bringing our team along for that because we have seen some improvements, and I think that our whole team can benefit strongly from it.
That's such a great way of thinking about it because you've talked about selling the role. And what you're talking about with technology is selling the enhancement to your own everyday life. The natural instinct of someone when you say, hey, we have some new technology that's going to change the way you do your job, like that isn't generally an exciting opener to a conversation. So when you can viscerally explain like, hey, think about the third of your job that you like the least. We're going to take that away or take half of that away, or whatever the thing is, and free you up to do more of the thing you like, whether it's talking to candidates or whatever the case may be. I think that's really powerful and a great way to get someone who's got to embrace some change to get out of how do I keep things the same into, oh, wow, this is going to be great. I can't wait until this new thing happens. Okay, so we always end these episodes with a lightning round. And so what I want you to imagine is you're there in the Portland office and the CEO shows up one day and you're making a cup of coffee and the CEO says, hey, Ashley, I've always been meaning to ask you, you're the expert on interviewing people. I spend a ton of my time interviewing. What's your one tip, best piece of advice for how to become a better interviewer?
So, always focusing on our days to spill and the candidate experience, because we're ultimately trying, again, to build our retention, to reduce our openings, which gives more time back to our leaders, gives more time back to being able to have customer service visits, being able to service your employees, being able to avoid overtime or reduce overtime, any of those extra expenditures that can go back into the company. So really improving that retention and being fast at it, as we mentioned earlier, is really crucial. And I think really speaks to the business and aligns with the business strategy of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to align with. And we're really trying to focus on bettering our sales close rate, and which has improved, which is exciting. They're going to get some business and we need to keep up with that. So we need to be able to fill fast. The sales team needs to be able to come back to us and say, how fast do you think I can start this account? And I can look up and be like, all right, 25 days is how fast I can get you started on average. So we have something that we can look forward to, really backing the sales team and making sure they look good, making sure Marsden looks good. So their friends talk to other friends, which come to us again, so on and so forth. And having that candidate experience looks great to that client as well that we might have just been awarded or that we're working for currently and servicing our internal clients.
Ashley Lynch, it is so obvious why you are a Talent All-Star. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much. It was great meeting you.
That's Ashley Lynch. She's the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Marsden Services. You'll find her LinkedIn profile below. And don't forget, we're an audio podcast also. So if you want to catch these conversations on the go, just search Talent All-Stars in your favorite podcast app and tap follow. Have feedback for us or ideas for the show? Email us anytime at talentallstars@ziprecruiter.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you right back here next week.